If you're a woman in retail looking to grow your career, connect with industry leaders, and recharge in a supportive community, the Women in Retail Leadership Summit is the event for you. And to all of our male listeners, if you know an amazing female colleague who would benefit from this experience, be sure to pass the word along. Happening at the beautiful Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island on April 28th through the 30th, registration is now open at womeninretailsummit.com. Women in Retail Leadership Circle is the sister brand of Total Retail.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the editor-in-chief of Total Retail. I'm excited to be joined on today's episode by Ankur Daga, who is the co-founder and CEO of Angara, an up-and-coming direct-to-consumer jewelry brand, and really looking forward to our conversation with Ankur to tell us all about Angara. It's really been a leader in the lab-grown diamond space, and I think our audience is going to take a lot from this conversation. So thanks for joining me on today's show, Ankur.
Great to be here, Joe.
So I gave just a very, very brief overview of what Angara does, but I would love for you to give a little more in-depth overview of the company. Maybe tell us a little bit about, I mentioned you're the co-founder, so you've been there right from the start. So tell us a little bit about the founding and kind of bring us up to date.
Absolutely. So we started the company in 2005, so this is our 20th year. So in the DTC era, pretty long. Historical background is I grew up in the jewelry business, so my parents are in wholesale gemstones. My wife's family, coincidentally, is also from the jewelry industry, but her family has a history of over 400 years, primarily supplying royalty all over the world. We both didn't have any intention of coming into the jewelry industry, but life comes full circle in many ways. So my quick background is I went to Wharton, worked at McKinsey. At McKinsey, my longest project was turning around a jewelry retailer. That's where I saw the scope in terms of breadth and depth of what can be done in jewelry. Jewelry companies tend to be very artisanal, but there's no real reason why that is the case. So I saw an opportunity to expand. Went to Harvard for business school, started the company while at Harvard. We started with really two main goals. One is how do we use technology to bring the industry back to its roots? So jewelry was sold for hundreds of years a certain way, which is very personal. The jeweler would go to the customer, and the customer would describe what they're dreaming of. The jeweler would sketch it. Once that's approved, they would go out and find those gemstones or diamonds, create the piece, come back in 6 months, and deliver the perfect piece. So we wanted to use technology to bring the industry back to that, which we feel is the right way to buy jewelry. And then the second part of it is really bringing color back to the forefront. So for centuries, color was a majority of the industry. All of a sudden, De Beers came out with the Diamond is Forever in 1948. And through amazing marketing, really, they captured 90% of the industry. But that's not necessarily, in our view, what customers have always wanted. Our focus was really swinging the pendulum back to what the customer actually wants.
So that provides a great context for the audience, and as we continue our conversation, I'd love for you to dig in a little bit more on the opportunity that you saw. I mentioned it's a 20-year-old brand. Talk a little bit about the white space that you were trying to fill within the jewelry industry when you launched Angara.
Absolutely. So I'll do a couple of contrasts in terms of how we were looking at it. So if you go to Tiffany today, the Fifth Avenue location, which is the largest jewelry store in the world, and you want to buy a sapphire engagement ring, you'll have three options presented to you. Our view was that through the internet, we can provide a myriad of choices. Whether you want to spend $500 or $50,000, there's something that would appeal to you. And with the internet, we could really source a tremendous amount of inventory and educate customers on what's possible. So in addition to diamond, we have 40 different types of gemstones that we cut and polish in-house. We design our own jewelry, manufacture our own jewelry, and then retail over the web. So it's really now end-to-end, where everything is in-house, everything is vertically integrated. And the idea is to give the customer complete choice in terms of the metal they would like, the shape of gemstone, size of gemstone, quality of gemstone, and then the piece that they're really envisioning.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that the vertical integration of the business, and that's been critical to the growth of the company. But let's follow up on the customer real quickly. Tell us a little bit about the behaviors that you're seeing from your customers at Angara, and then how that kind of influences your merchandising strategy, right? You talked about the breadth of merchandise that you're able to offer them. Tell us a little bit about the customer preferences and the trends you're seeing in terms of the jewelry buying experience.
Yeah. So customers come into the site looking at a specific design that they like. What's interesting is 20% of customers end up buying what they initially saw. 80% migrate. They customize that piece. So for example, let's say on Google, you saw a 3-stone ring. That's a sapphire engagement ring. You come into the site and you realize that, hey, maybe instead of a half a carat, I really want a 2-carat center gemstone, or I want a very high quality piece, something like what Tiffany would supply, um, and you really like platinum or you really like yellow gold, and then you can go ahead and customize that. So to fit the budget and to fit what you had in mind. So that's how typically customers buy from us today. Most of our customers are coming either through social media or through Google with a specific intent of what they're looking for.
Yeah, they're coming, having done maybe a little bit of their research before they arrive on site. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, so most customers are have done a tremendous amount of research before they come to us, so they already have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for. For us, part of the experience is to really educate in the way that a traditional jeweler would educate you on
Mhm.
different types of sapphires, for example, one's coming from Madagascar versus Ceylon, as well as what to look for in a sapphire. That education process is much easier when a certain amount of work has been done before they come to the site, which is typically what happens. At the same time, we're trying to educate between, let's say, lab-grown gemstones and natural gemstones, what the pros and cons are for both. So it's super transparent. We're very agnostic to whether people choose diamonds or color stones of various types, whether they choose natural or lab. Our objective is to really provide very fine jewelry, very high level of making, and educate the customer on what they're looking at.
Following up on that education piece, because as a D2C online, you think about the jewelry, it's obviously a high ticket item. It's also highly emotional, right? There's this isn't just a quick whim of a purchase, right? This is a lot of thought going in. There's a long lead time here. And there needs to be kind of that, I don't want to say hand holding, but there is that education and the kind of walking the customer through multiple steps before they ultimately transact. Online, what are there barriers to that? How do you accomplish what many think that they go in store, so they're talking to the expert, the store associate that might help there? How do you compensate and provide that same level of education and experience, but online?
Yeah, so fundamentally, there's a couple of advantages that online has. One is if you go into a jewelry store, let's say at Garden State Plaza, which is very close to home, there's huge information asymmetry. The salesperson knows so much more than you do typically about the product, and it's a relatively stressful experience. Online, there's no such thing just because you can research on your own to your heart's content. So there's no pressure, there's no sales process. It's really just you're able to find what you're looking for. So that's, I think, the first major advantage. The other advantage of online is that there's a tremendous amount more choice. So, as I mentioned, we have 40 different gemstones. We have 300 designs per gemstone in various qualities, shapes, sizes, budgets, and so forth. Typically, at a store, they will sell you what they have in the showroom and in their cases. And so the sales pitch is really around, okay, I have this piece and that's what I want to sell you, rather than what are you looking for?
Yeah, and I think was it 20% come in with one thing in mind that they're coming to Angara site, and then they're ultimately they're buying something maybe that is either a different stone or a different design or a different kind of function.
Precisely. And that blew us away. We were imagining that, 60 to 70% would come in and buy what they were originally thinking of. I'm blown away that it's actually only 20% because the world is so much more vast than consumers typically anticipate.
I want to come back to the vertical integration and how that's been critical in supporting Angara's growth and development. Tell me a little bit about the business model and how you're kind of owning that customer experience. Like you said, this is a long tail process. Can you go through that a little bit, Ankur?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we started with retail. and we had external manufacturing. So we would give them orders based on our manufacturer's orders based on what the customer ordered. What we realized, because only 20% was buying what was kind of quote unquote in stock and 80% was customized. In order to provide the right experience, we really needed to manage the entire supply chain end to end. So for example, that 3-stone ring I was referring to, there's 64 permutations of that that you can play around with on the site. The idea is to really give you that customization option, but to do it at a speed that you're used to with Amazon and so forth. So today we have the process where if you ordered it right now, it's kind of 4 o'clock in New York, it would go into casting overseas in Thailand, typically in the next 2 hours. It would take 8 hours to cast. Then we would hand select the gemstone that you picked, the diamonds that you picked, set those pieces, polish and rhodium the piece, quality control. And by the time you wake up tomorrow, it would already be on a plane to you. So it's within 24 hours, most pieces are made, but they're made for you to the ring size that you're ordering with the stone that you selected. So it's pretty magical. That 6-month process that used to take 6 months to get exactly what you want, we've compressed it to 24 hours.
Yeah, and being vertically integrated and kind of owning that, you're able to be more nimble, right? Like you talked about the speed, but the customization options that are an inherent differentiating point for your company.
That's right. So we cut and polish a lot of our own gemstones. So whether you're ordering something in an 8 millimeter or 9 millimeter or 10 millimeter, we would be able to cut and polish it to the exact specifications. That makes sense. We would also cast the ring. Let's say you're size 9, which is a relatively large size. We would be able to cast the ring in that size and select the gemstones that you want. Whereas if you go into a typical chain jeweler in the US, you're looking at 9 to 12 weeks to get, even today, to get the piece that you're envisioning.
Yeah. So let's talk about the product itself a little bit. I mentioned at the outset, you specialize at Angara in lab-grown diamonds and gemstones. Tell us a little bit about what that means for the customer, how it's impacted your business.
Yeah, so we do both natural and lab grown for both diamonds and color stones. Lab grown is chemically, physically, optically identical to the natural equivalent. The difference is one came out of earth and it was made by nature. The second was made in a lab. We're talking about 2025. Lab-grown diamonds are typically 90% cheaper than their natural equivalent, but are essentially the same good. They just came from a different place. So, the average engagement ring in the US is a 1 carat engagement ring. That 1 carat diamond can be $1,000 if it's lab-grown. It could be $10,000 if it's natural. But it will look, to any jeweler in the world, it will look exactly identical. Only labs can tell the difference. So very specialized labs that are looking for nitrogen traces and some other parameters can tell the difference. It's really changed the industry entirely, not just us, but just more broadly. So the majority of engagement rings in the US this quarter are going to be lab grown.
I was going to say, to the untrained eye, obviously, there is no discernible difference, right? If you're looking at a lab-grown diamond versus ring versus a natural diamond ring, there is no discernible difference that you would be able to see.
That's correct. Untrained or trained. There's not a jeweler in the world that with a loop, even a 30x loop, that could tell the difference.
So why do you think then, and maybe they are more of your purchases moving to lab grown? It's a lower price point. It's not able to be determined that there's a difference in how it looks. Maybe the data is showing that a lot of your customers are moving to that lab grown purchase.
I'll give you a couple of statistics that are pretty interesting. So on the diamond side, on the pages where we have both natural and lab grown, 60% of customers are choosing the lab grown equivalent. What's interesting is they're actually spending more money than the ones that are buying natural, which is kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
So, for an engagement ring in the US, if you take out, we did this nationwide survey 6 months ago where we're really looking at engagement ring preferences. The average American fiance would like a diamond that's between 2 and 3 carats, typically round, and in white gold or platinum. So that in a jewelry store, as a natural diamond will cost you 25,000. So that's out of reach for a lot of people.
Mhm.
The average engagement ring purchase is roughly $5,000 in the US. With lab grown, you can get a 3 carat center stone in the mounting of your dreams for under $5,000. So now all of a sudden, you can have the engagement ring of your dream, which, for generations was out of reach.
Yeah.
So that has changed preferences dramatically. And incidentally, there's a whole upgrade cycle where somebody might have gotten a 0.5 carat ring 10 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, they can get the ring that they've always wanted, and they're upgrading to that.
Yeah, it can lengthen your customer relationship, right? If they're spending less at the front and they haven't completely used they're then probably more willing to come back and buy again and do that upgrade as you're talking about.
Precisely. Yep.
So as you've shifted the business with a greater focus on lab-grown diamonds and gemstones, have there been challenges associated with that? And then talk me through what those challenges may have been and what you've done to kind of overcome them.
Education still has been the biggest one. So 2/3 of customers, even now, have a belief that lab-grown diamonds are not real. Interestingly, they're really in the kind of the baby boomer Gen X sort of cohort, whereas Gen Z, the large majority understand lab-grown diamonds are physically, chemically, optically identical. So when a customer comes into the site, our objective is to really say, okay, lab-grown diamonds are chemically, physically, optically identical, 1/10 the price, but they will not retain value like natural diamonds would be. And these are the pros and cons. We're agnostic as to which the customer chooses. Our objective is really to educate. And because there's still so much confusion out there, it's an opportunity for us to really showcase what is possible.
How about scaling production of lab-grown diamonds? Obviously, the natural diamonds are a resource of the earth. While there's a finite supply of those, I would imagine, there's
Mhm.
also lab-growns that require humans to produce. Tell me a little bit about scaling the amount of lab-grown diamonds that are accessible to jewelers such as Angara.
So lab-grown diamonds are probably 100 to 1,000 times easier to produce. So to get a 1 carat mine diamond, you'll have to go through 2 tons of dirt to dig out the piece that's a rough piece and then cut and polish it. Lab-grown diamonds are grown in a lab. They're infinitely scalable. You just buy more machines, you could produce more product. The similarity is they're both cut and polished by hand still. So whether it's natural or lab grown, you will have a very rough piece that looks effectively like a rock. And that cutting and polishing of that into something that's 58 facets, that is going to still be done by hand. Um, but you could have infinite supply of lab grown diamonds theoretically. It just depends on how much you invest.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you know, natural diamonds are a finite resource.
Exactly. My final question for you, Ankur, as we record this in still the early part of the year, we're in kind of close to mid-February. I'd love to kind of identify what your growth opportunities are as you think about the rest of 2025. We've talked about lab-grown diamonds. We've talked about kind of the vertical integration of the Angara business model and how that is enabling you to scale quickly. Maybe other things. There may be, marketing campaigns or technology investments or people investments. What's on the roadmap, I guess, for Angara in 2025?
Yeah, so we crossed 100 million in revenue in 2022. By the end of the decade, we're looking at $1 billion in revenue. This is all done organically, no VC investment to date, nor do we plan on taking some in the future. In 2025, a lot of our strategy is around really 3 axes. So one is international expansion. We're in the US, UK, Australia, Canada today. We're expanding through the rest of Europe this year, as well as the Gulf countries, all GCC countries,
Mhm.
Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan. So at that point, we'll have the majority of the market, as well as India, I should mention, which is another relatively large market. So that's part one. Part two is you know, trying to bring the industry back to 400 years ago, which is what the ideal experience is. We're using a lot of machine learning and AI to create a product that really allows us to build whatever you have in mind, but in real time. So let's say you met in the Himalayas and you want to incorporate mountains into the design. We'll be able to do that through AI and machine learning, but with guardrails that make it look like a beautiful jewelry piece. That I think will be the first of its kind in the jewelry industry, or really anything, which we expect to be big, and that's going to come out mid of this year, which should be a breakthrough.
As you think about D2C model, physical retail, is that anywhere in the thought of potential for Angara? Where does that kind of sit?
We are looking more at expanding categories as well as customization as opposed to physical retail. The challenge with physical retail is it takes away our ability to customize,
Hmm.
which is what we think the fundamental approach should be to buying jewelry. And so we've deliberately not gone to physical retail because then we would fall into the trap that I think most retailers have fallen into, which is they sell what they have rather than what the customer actually wants.
Yeah, and that's your differentiation. And
Yeah.
you've clearly set your vision up so and aligned yourself with the goals of what you've mentioned for 2025. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Ankur Daga, who is the co-founder and CEO of Angara, for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Ankur.
Thank you, Joe. Enjoyed it as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
Female retail leaders. Join us at the Women in Retail Leadership Summit from April 28th through the 30th at the Ritz-Carlton, Amelia Island, Florida. It's 3 days of insights, networking, and inspiration. Male listeners, share this with your female colleagues. Register at womeninretailsummit.com. Women in Retail Leadership Circle is the sister brand of Total Retail.